From people disappearing in water slides, a story about someone sending a text from the afterlife, to a person claiming that everyone on Earth disappeared from their perspective. All this and more in this compilation of 21 Glitch in the Matrix stories, coming up next. The Ghost Family. About 3 years ago, I worked at a pizzeria where I carried out varied tasks depending on the needs. This evening, I was in charge of deliveries. A couple and their 2 children, who were regular customers, ordered by phone and came to pick up their order at the restaurant. Usually, they opted for delivery, but this wasn't the first time they had to come pick up. As they left, I walked right past them. A few minutes later, we realized that they were missing an item. We tried calling them, but there was no answer. As they were regular customers and I had a delivery nearby their address, I decided to drop off the missing item myself. However, when I arrived at their building, something seemed off. They lived on the ground floor of a small building and their yard was usually filled with children's toys. But that day, it was empty. I rang the intercom, and through the glass door of the building, I saw an elderly woman opening the door of the flat and coming to me. She told me she had lived there for years and there was no family living there. Confused, I went back to my car and video called my colleague to make sure I wasn't going crazy. She became puzzled as I had just been and confirmed that I was at the correct address. This would have been surprising otherwise, as I had delivered to them several times before and was very familiar with the neighborhood. I tried calling the customers again, but still no answer. Eventually, I had to move on, as I was running out of time. About 2 weeks later, they reordered as if nothing had happened. I made the delivery and everything seemed back to normal. Of course, I told them about the strange events. They were just as confused as I was and had no explanation, since they of course didn't move and no elderly woman lived with them. Moreover, they were certain that they had gone straight home after picking up their order. Since these events, we referred to them as the Ghost Family. A parallel life / awoken by a lamp. Throwaway account because this is really personal. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note, he was 325 pounds. I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady. She made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years, we got married, and almost immediately, she bore me a daughter. I had a great job, and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was 2, my wife bore me a son. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day, while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D, but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on 4 legs, in a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon, I stopped that too, as I wasn't eating or drinking. I stared at that lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come and try to talk to me. By this time, my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real. The house is not real. My wife, my kids, none of that is real. My last 10 years of my life are not real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of weird noises, and I became aware of pain. A fucking shit ton of pain. The first words I said were, "I'm missing teeth," and opened my eyes. I was laying on my back on the sidewalk, surrounded by people that I didn't know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point, a cop scooped me up, dragged / walked me across the sidewalk and grass, and threw me face down in the back of a cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive and give me CT scans and shit. I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says. I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist. I had just recently purchased my house, and my old washer and dryer wouldn't fit. Plus, they sucked and my wife hated using them, so she sent me on a mission to buy a new set. I didn't do my research, and as I'm standing in the Lowe's appliance department coming to grips with what I'm up against, my contractor neighbor walked up behind me. He helped me pick out the exact units I was going to purchase. I bought them, and then life got weird for a few minutes. When I got in the truck with my 2 large boxes, there stands my neighbor waiting for me. I thought he was waiting to help me load them, but he just looked at the boxes and said something like, "That's a gas dryer. We don't have gas." I bust his balls for a couple of minutes about helping me pick the wrong units out, and it was as normal an interaction as I could have had. I went inside to the return walk of shame of the items I literally never even left the parking lot with. My neighbor walked to his truck. I'm at the return counter. The girl behind the register asks me my name. I told her and handed her my receipt from 5 minutes prior while explaining the situation. Without even looking up at me, she asks again, "Name?" I tell her my name a second time, and she says nothing while typing into the computer. In comes my neighbor to return desk with a gallon of paint. He waits in line behind me, says nothing. The girl behind the register looks up at me and says, "Name, sir?" I tell her my name for the 3rd time, pointing to the receipts on the counter, and try to explain the situation again. She types into the computer some more, and for what probably a solid minute, says nothing at all. Another girl at the return desk finishes with another customer and comes over to help. The new girl says to me while they both stare into the computer screen, "Name?" A 4th time. I give them both my name. Without taking their eyes off the screen, the new girl says, "I shit you not. I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist." I got sort of lightheaded at first when she said that, because I was already thinking how strange this was. I said back, "I don't exist, or I'm not in your system." Without answering me, the second girl says to my neighbor, "Sir, I can help you over here," and moves to the next register as my neighbor walks past me, without saying a single word to me, returns his paint, and walks out the door. Then, almost as if nothing weird had just happened, the first girl just says my name, and "Here's your return. You'll have to purchase the new ones and we'll refund you for the ones you've mistakenly purchased." Without even going back to the appliances, there behind the counter stands a guy with the units I needed on a dolly, ready to help me buy and load them into my truck. My neighbor was gone, but when I asked him about it, he didn't think there was anything weird about the whole thing. I, on the other hand, had an existential crisis and only barely managed to hold it together. Edit. I understand it's in people's nature to disbelieve me, but it happened exactly like I said. I'm not going to argue in the comments, so take it as you will. If I'm going to fabricate a story, it would have had lasers and explosions, not a trip to Lowe's to buy a washer and dryer. I see a lot of comments of people saying, "Hey bro, this is the best type of content to eat some food and watch." Well, to those, here's something you might like. Factor 75. They have created some delicious already planned meals that are delivered right to you, so you don't have to guess and waste time trying to figure out what you're having for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Who knows how many hours I've spent doing that right after work. It also helps you avoid fast food or having to order in all the time by providing nutritious and dietitian approved meals, boosting you towards achieving those fitness goals. It's perfect for those wanting no hassle prepared foods with no prep or cleanup necessary, allowing you to stay focused on what you love to do. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGVALISAUG50 for 50% off your first box. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. So click that link if you want to help support the channel and have a delicious meal at the same time. And thank you to Factor 75 for sponsoring this video. Something is wrong with my girlfriend. Me, male 26, and my girlfriend, female 25, have been living together in an apartment for 2.5 years. Everything has been normal until quarantine started around 4 weeks ago, when I started to notice some odd things. For instance, for the last 3 weeks or so, my girlfriend has been putting sugar in her morning coffee, while throughout our entire relationship, she's always been very much against it. It may seem like a small detail, but she's always been complaining about how I don't know what real coffee is since I put quite a lot of sugar. On the first day when I saw her drinking coffee with sugar, I asked her, why would she do that? And she looked at me, weirded out, and said something like, "What are you talking about? I've always been putting sugar in my coffee." I felt a bit confused for a moment, but then we started talking about some other things, so I didn't think any more about it until the morning after, when she did the exact same thing, and had once again the same reaction. Fast forward a few days, and another odd thing happened. We were having sex, and she suddenly suggested a brand new pose that we had already tried, but it had gone wrong and it hurt her a lot, so we had simply decided not to try it anymore. Naturally, I was very surprised with her suggestion, and reminded her about the time when it went wrong, and she completely dismissed it, saying that I probably mixed her up with some ex-girlfriend, or that I was tripping. We then did the same pose, and we actually enjoyed it. Today, the weirdest thing happened, which is the reason I'm writing this post. In the afternoon, I was working at home. I'm employed as a PhD student at the computer science department of a university. When my girlfriend asked me what's up with a guy who I've never heard of before, I asked her who is she referring to, and she said, well, it's that colleague of yours who you always talk about, the one from the company where you're employed at. I froze and asked her to repeat, and she said the exact same thing all over again. Then I told her that I don't work at that company, nor have I worked at any company since I started a PhD straight after my master's degree. At this point, she also froze, and we were just staring at each other, completely confused and shocked for a few moments. She then asked me what the hell is going on, and I reminded her about the coffee thing and about the pose and that I don't know what's going on anymore. At this point, she started crying too and asked me what's wrong with us. Nor she, nor me, nor anyone in both of our families have ever had any mental problems in the past. We don't know what's this about. Can anyone explain what's wrong with us? They dialed the wrong number and called my phone. I was at work in a hospital and had a room with an elderly husband and a wife who both had pneumonia. It's unusual to have both husband and wife admitted at the same time. Later in the shift, I got a call on my cell phone, and I didn't recognize the number and let it go to voicemail. Later I listened. It was something like, hey Jeffrey, it's your Uncle Bob. Looks like your granny and grampy are sick and both in the hospital. Give me a call back. I thought, okay, that's a bit weird, but whatever. I decided to call the guy back with the hospital phone, just to say that Jeffrey didn't get the message. Uncle Bob answered and was glad I clarified. I then asked him what was the name of Granny and Grampy. It happened to be the same elderly couple. I asked Bob what is Jeffrey's number, and it was 1 digit off from mine. So Bob misdialed Jeffrey's number by 1 digit, calling my cell phone instead, in order to discuss the sickly couple, who I was taking care of at the time. I cannot imagine the odds of that happening. Weirds me out when I think about it. Hopefully, I explained it well enough. People disappearing in a water slide. When I was around 12, I saw something strange happen at a water park. The park had a tower with 2 water slides, a long one and a shorter one. Me and my brother lined up in a queue which was very long. So in order to pass the time, we started guessing what gender a person coming out of the long slide will be. We did that for a while, until people stopped coming out completely. I didn't think that was too weird at the time, but then when I got to the top of the tower, I saw people still going in. I freaked out and told my brother to take the short slide. We did, and we met our parents at the bottom of the slide in the pool. They confirmed that no one had come out for like 10 minutes, even though I saw people going in. The first people started coming out about 5 minutes afterwards. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened to the other people. You aren't the only one. I saved this post about 6 years ago from a personal mysteries thread. I have no idea who wrote it, but your story reminded me a lot of it. It's a bit long, but here goes. Near where I grew up, there was a large amusement park. One half of it was rides and coasters. The other half was a water park. Obviously, the summer jobs there were a great pull when you were a teenager, and they employed a huge number of my friends on summer breaks from college. The jobs over in the water park were generally considered more desirable, although I was never able to get them because I was a horrible swimmer. Basically, the water park opened later and closed earlier, so the shifts were nicer, and they had to pay you more because you had to be first aid and CPR and lifeguard certified. A lot of my friends worked there, and I knew about 3 of the people involved in this story. It started at a water slide, one of the huge tube slides that you had to walk up 7 flights of steps to get to the top. One lifeguard was posted up top, telling people when to go, and one of my friends was the lifeguard at the bottom, who helped people off the slide and gave them all the clear for the next person to go. A family had come with their child, who was very young, and apparently barely the height limit to go on the ride. The family was in line with the father first, kid second, and mother last, so that someone would be with the kid both top and bottom of the slide. The father goes down the slide, gets off, and the lifeguard gives all clear, and waits. He can't see what's going on up top, but finally the next rider comes down. It's the mother, who walks over to the father and asks where the son is. There's a moment of confusion, and my friend is pulled over by the family. The kid had been the next one to enter the slide up top before his mother, but had never come out the bottom. My friend is confused, calls up to the top lifeguard, who verifies that the kid went down the slide. Neither my friend nor the father saw the kid come out of the bottom. Until this is figured out, they shut down the ride. The top lifeguard calls security and reports this as a missing child, while my friend calls a supervisor. The supervisor shows up and is apparently afraid that the kid is wedged in the tube somehow, and in such a way that the mother failed to dislodge him coming down the slide. The way she said it, it was apparently obvious that she was assuming some injury to be involved. The parents are obviously upset at this point and freaking out, and the supervisor has the upper lifeguard go down the ride himself, spread out to make sure there's no child jammed into the turns of the ride. He comes out the bottom, having not dislodged the corpse of the child, and everyone is more confused than ever. Meanwhile, security called, saying that they just turned up a missing kid near one of the coasters. Could they get a description of the child missing? The supervisor sort of dismisses it out of hand that it could have been the same child. The coaster they found the kid by was clearly across the park, and the child was only missing for a few minutes at this point. Instead, she has a bunch of lifeguards run up the stairs and come down the slide, still hoping to dislodge the kid, while other employees quietly look around the bottom in case the kid somehow managed to fall out the tube. Meanwhile, upper management is called in as the parents of the kid are alternating between yelling and blaming each other, panicking and threatening to sue the park. Upper management calls security and asks them to pull the security camera footage from the top of the slide to try to figure out what happened. A kid a few years ahead of me in high school happened to be working security, and he was there when they pulled the footage, and one of the security guards says that he is almost positive that's the kid that they have in the next room. They get the kid's name, and sure enough, he's in the missing children's room, safe and sound. Here's where things get weird. The footage shows the father, kid, and mother entering the slide. It's almost time-stamped, so they know where the child went down the slide. The incident report for when the kid was found clear across the park behind a roller coaster shows he was discovered less than 5 minutes later. If you've ever noticed, nothing in an amusement park is laid out linearly. There's always fences and bushes and buildings between you and where you want to go. The idea is to make you ramble about between rides to cut down on ride wait time. My friend, the security guard, tested it, and walking at a staff clip and knowing all the shortcuts, it was a 20-minute walk for him. Furthermore, when you hit the edge of the water park, there were signs that shirts and shoes had to be worn past that point. If you saw anyone, even a kid, walking past there without them, you were to detain them. The kid was found barefoot and shirtless in just his swim trunks. The idea that no one across a 12-acre would stop this kid, who to travel that far had to be running, and ask him to put on appropriate clothing is completely weird. Weirdest of all was that the incident report stated that the child seemed disoriented and was at first not able to respond to questions. It also stated that the kid, who was in a water slide 5 minutes prior, was bone dry. This was just the talk of the park for about a week, with everyone trying to come up with explanations. Guards searching the other security footage to try to find the kid going across the park, people trying to get from the slide to the coaster, etc. Then the upper management came out and basically hushed it up. Supervisors told that if they heard anyone talking about it, they had to be fired. Pretty soon the park moved on to whatever the next drama was, and it all got swept aside. But yeah, child goes down the slide and into time and space portal. My eyesight corrected itself until I realized I wasn't wearing my glasses. For a bit of context, my eyesight is horrible. Even half a foot in front of my face is nothing but blurry color. Yesterday, my mom and brother picked me up to go to an appointment. I was running a little late, so didn't have time to put my contacts in / do my makeup, and was getting ready on the drive. So while my mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat with the mirror down. I took off my glasses to apply my eyeshadow. My brother, who was sitting right behind me, asked me a question, and I turned back to look at him. When I turned my head back around, I quickly finished my eyeshadow and shut the mirror. I was looking out my window at the farmland just off the road and thinking how beautiful it was when I suddenly realized that I hadn't put on my glasses. They were sitting on the dashboard. As soon as I had that realization, my perfect vision went back to just blurred colors. It was an instant, like flipping a switch on my sight. It was so shocking that I yelled, "Holy shit." My outburst startled my mom and my brother, so I told them what had just happened, and they said they believed me but couldn't think of a rational reason for it. We tried to figure it out for the rest of the drive, but honestly couldn't. To be honest, if there's some secret to magically fixing my eyesight that I accidentally stumbled upon, then I wish I could find it again. Rationally speaking, the brain naturally corrects a lot of things relating to eyesight, just like how everyone's image they perceive is naturally flipped by the brain so it looks normal to us. So it's completely possible that your brain was correcting your eyesight completely by itself for a split second. Just a theory. My 3-year-old insisted that I was having a baby and described her perfectly. A few years ago, when my daughter was 3, I decided to go back to school and become a nurse. My husband and I were in no way trying for a baby whatsoever. I was on birth control and we were being very careful. I walked into her preschool one day to find the director and her teachers telling me congratulations with big smiles on their faces. I used to work as a preschool teacher here, so a lot of these people were close friends of mine. I asked them what they're congratulating me for, and they tell me that my daughter announced to everyone that mommy is having a little sister in her tummy. I laughed it off and told them all I was sorry to disappoint them, but that just wasn't true. My daughter and I went home and talked about it. I told her mommy didn't have a baby in her tummy. She just kept pointing at my belly and saying, "Yes, you do," as if I was lying to her. A few days later, I wake up to someone touching my belly. My daughter has the bottom of my shirt pulled up with her head resting on my belly while she rubs it gently and says, "Baby sister, what are you doing hiding in there?" It was really sweet, and I just assumed she really wanted a little sister. She has never expressed any interest in having a sibling prior to this, and we never discussed it. We had a talk again, and she was upset with me and told me that she had seen her before and she's in there. She told me that her sister looks different than us and had blonde hair and blue eyes with little holes in her cheeks, aka dimples. My daughter, husband, and I have all very dark hair, chocolate brown eyes, and no dimples. I talk to her about wanting a sibling and tell her that when I finish school, we will try again for a little brother or sister. She's frustrated and yells, "I already have a sister." I was expecting my period to start within the next week like clockwork. It didn't though. I took a pregnancy test and just stared at that faint, positive result for what felt like forever. I was completely in shock. I was on birth control, so immediately called my OBGYN and they saw me the next day. It was estimated that I was 4 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I gave birth to a blonde hair, blue-eyed little girl with the sweetest dimples. This experience has blown my mind. Did anyone else experience people disappearing off the face of the earth? Temporarily, of course. I was at a New Year's Eve dinner with my parents, uncles, cousins, a bunch of people. This was in Argentina, so it's summer, and we're all eating outside. It was a big white round table. At some point, I went in the house, don't remember why or how long, maybe to go to the bathroom or get a drink, and when I came out, everyone was gone. Everyone and everything was gone, like no one had ever dined there. I looked around the yard, went back inside the house, open concept, hard to hide a bunch of people, but nothing, not a sound, like no one had ever been there. I don't even think there were crickets. After searching for about 10 minutes, I go to sit inside the house to think, and I hear the toilet flush. My cousin comes out, and I tell her that everyone is gone. She looks at me weird and leaves. I'm waiting for her to come back and tell me that I'm crazy, but she doesn't, so I panicked. I mustered the courage to go out, and there's everyone, eating at the table as if nothing happened. I went to my seat and I asked what had happened, where did they go, but everyone looked at me like I had a third eye. After the fact, I kept asking, but no one remembers anything happening that night. I've always thought I might be some kind of crazy, but I was telling a friend last week and she matter-of-factly told me about glitches in the Matrix, and that shit happens all the time. So I already feel a bit better that I may not be losing it. Has anyone had a similar experience? I've had this happen with objects before, but never with people. My wife replied to my idea live on stream. Wife has been dead for 2 years. I don't think this is classified as a technology glitch. Technology recorded it, but it was an actual real event, just recorded live on stream. Hello all. I'm a very minor YouTube and Twitch person. Nothing is monetized. I do it as part of my therapy to help with being severely disabled. My wife died in 2018. She was a gamer like me. One of our favorite games was Star Trek Online. After she died, gaming and streaming became my outlet. So 9th January 2021, afternoon UK time, I am doing my normal stream playing STO, blowing stuff up in a mission, and I notice a ship that I like using cannons, and get all excited with the idea of creating one using my Klingon character, voicing that idea, and my wife answers me on stream live. Take a look.
In theory.
One, no, it wasn't in-game audio, checked by an audio engineer, 400 megahertz range. Her voice is definitely coming from inside the room with some sound artifacts. 2, recorded by mic AT2020, not by a game/PC audio, and I heard it through my open back headphones, not noise cancelling. I can hear my room quite clearly. 3, no hi-fi or item in the room that could cause it. 4, in self-isolation for the last 12 months due to, you know what, no one else can have been in my house. 5, if you watch the dog on my lap in the clip, she looks in the direction off to the side that the sound came from. And finally 6, this is not the first time I've seen and I've heard a lot of stuff since my wife's death, but this was one of the first times I've caught it on live stream, and my normal analytical thinking can't just call on audible hallucinations or other things. Also, the voice is as near as we can tell from a sample of my wife's voice, and just the kind of thing that she would comment on. She did like to answer with mhm-ms. Update, I have an iPad, no iPhone, and the iPad was not in the room on that day. I have also tested my iPad with the audio from this, and it doesn't pick it up. It also sounds completely different. Please, let's keep this civil. And maybe nothing, but yet it creeped me out. I had a dream that I was back in high school, at the beginning of first year. Everything was exactly the same, except I had the memories of my life after high school. In the dream, I told all of my classmates that I was from the future, but no one would believe me. Only one friend, who was very smart, said that time travel is theoretically possible. This is where it gets weird. When I told my friends about it, their jaws dropped. They said back in junior year, I was acting weird one day, asking time travel questions, that I said I come from the future. They also said that I was somehow out of it, that I was there, but at the same time, I kinda wasn't. I saw the shock in their eyes when I told them what I dreamed. They even recounted some of the details in the dream that I didn't tell them. The weirdest thing is that I barely remember that day. I remember some of the stuff that also happened in the dream, but that day is kinda foggy to me. I don't know. My friends may be joking with me, but I have known them for 15 years, and I know their genuine reaction when I see one. Creepiest thing I have ever experienced. If I told you what I saw last night, you would not believe me. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it. Scariest shit I've ever experienced. I can't even talk about it without sounding crazy, so here it goes. I went to a laundry around 2 a.m. with my older son. After we put the laundry in, we went to McDonald's drive-thru to get something to drink. The drive-thru was packed with about 5 or 6 cars ahead of us. I noticed none of the cars were moving forward, and it had been like that for 5 minutes already waiting. So I decided to go around the car in front of me to go to the drive-thru lane. McDonald's has 2 lanes. As I'm pulling around them, I look to their car and see why they are not moving, and I kid you not, both people, driver and passenger, looked dead. Head tilted all the way back, eyes shut, not moving. Dead. I freaked out and tried to pull out of the drive-thru, entirely going around the other cars just to get out of there, and I kid you not, the next car I passed, all the passengers, same thing, also looked dead. Head tilted backwards, eyes shut. I panicked, thinking maybe they were all shot or someone killed them. Also, I could hit the gas and get out of there. I couldn't fathom what had happened or barely speak. I was hyperventilating, so my son called 911 and told them what had happened, and they sent an officer to check. A few minutes later, the cops called us back, said everything was fine at McDonald's. Mind you, my son saw it too. We both saw the cars in front of us, the people that looked dead. The whole thing was terrifying. It literally looked like one of those rapture movies, or the end of the world type stuff. Needless to say, I can't wrap my head around it, or what I saw, or why it happened. I'm so scared over it. I know I'm not crazy because my son saw it too, but it feels crazy to even say it. Anyways, yeah, scariest thing ever. My friend messaged me and said she thinks we experienced a quote-unquote glitch. And this is so new to me. I had never heard of glitches ever happening in my entire life, but I am super freaked out and would love your thoughts because I had severe anxiety and I feel so crazy now. Elevators freak me out. The first time my mom believed me that weird stuff happened to me regularly. First off, I know this is nothing compared to other stories on here, but I chose to share it because why not? Before and after this incident, several other things did and continue to happen to me. Strange things. I just have gotten used to it and have learned to appreciate them. So this was when I was about 8 years old in 2001. My mom, brother, aunt, and grandma had all traveled to Chicago to see Dinosaur Zoo. We had been staying in a hotel nearby for about 5 days. It was very upscale, new, and overall very nice. Those entire 5 days, my mom would let me run ahead to the elevator when returning to our room from swimming, getting ice cream, etc., and let me ride up alone, since our room was right to the left of the elevator when you get off, and my grandma would always have the door cracked. So one day, on the way back from the pool, literally just got out, wet hair, suit, towel. I did the same thing, ran ahead and entered the elevator, pressed the button for the 7th floor. There is only one elevator in this hotel, by the way. Once I got to the 7th floor, which I knew by the signs outside the elevator, I went to the second door to the left like I had maybe 20 times before that week. I knocked and knocked. Nothing. I remember becoming weirdly alarmed at this point. Best way I can describe it. Even though I was smart enough to know I could always just return to the lobby or that my mom would be arriving shortly. So while wondering why my grandma wasn't answering the door, I returned a few feet to the elevator and waited for my mom and brother. I saw on the display that the elevator was arriving on the floor 7, the floor I was on, which was clearly written on the sign. I see the light and hear the elevator ding. The door's open, and it's empty. At this point, I just feel something is very off, and return to the door, knocking and crying now, getting cold because I'm still very wet from the pool. Finally, after no more than 1 minute, a very old woman answers the door and says, "Dear, I told you already yesterday this is not your room." I had never been there yesterday. She then said, "It'll be fine, I am very sorry, but I am on the phone with my son. Give it a few more minutes, your mother is coming." And freaking closed the door. I was shocked, cause I knew I was cute, and how could anyone close the door on a crying kid who lost their mother, especially a woman who seemed like a caring grandmother type. Almost immediately after she closed the door, the elevator opened and my mom ran out crying and grabbed me. She was saying, "Oh honey, where were you?" I had never been so worried. She then went to open the door. Not our room. She was stunned. The whole time I'm trying to explain I had been there, and my timeline of events had only been about 5 minutes. Her still hugging and holding me. She kinda just went into autopilot and went back into the elevator with me. She pressed 7 again, the doors closed super briefly and then reopened. The elevator didn't move at all. Once the door opened, we both saw my grandmother standing in the second door to the left crying, and then very happy, running to hug us. Apparently, had been missing for 45 minutes. Police were called, every floor had been gone too. They were all still in the process of knocking all the doors, opening even locked vacant rooms. Apparently my mother had decided to once more go and look at the pool to see if I had returned there. Then after seeing it was empty, she took the same only elevator back up to 7, only this time, out of the multiple other times that day, she found me. And not only that, we were clearly not in the elevator hiding out, as it was the only one, and the police and staff had gone up and down the elevator multiple times looking for me. We still talk about it to this day and can't explain it. My hair was still wet. The police were kinda pissed until the hotel staff pulled up the camera showing me getting on the elevator, but then never getting off. Then what was the creepiest was when my mother got on from the lobby, you see her get on, then 10 minutes passed, and then she gets off floor 7, with me in her arms. They went through all cameras on all floors, which had very clear angles of the elevator on each floor. Nothing. I swear the staff was freaked out, as were the police. They were almost convinced someone had taken me and then became freaked out and left me shortly after. They were stumped as to why my hair was still wet though, but they couldn't refute the cameras, as they were high resolution, working correctly and everything. I have always wanted to call back and see if they still talk about it years later. I just don't want to mess with it because it's not like I even see the event as serving a purpose, you know? I have no clue who the woman was, nor was I ever able able to identify her, because for the investigation, even after they found me, they locked down the hotel and no possible exits and had a perimeter. Chicago does not F around, by the way, with possible abductions. Every guest in the hotel was more than happy to help. Women from the ages 50 on all willingly let police take photos. Not one of them was the woman. This woman had very blue eyes, like very. The only possible connection I can think of was that the woman and I had almost identical eyes. I have kinda a rare color for how dark my hair is. I don't know. Sorry for my long ass post. My daughter and I both witnessed and talked to my husband in our house while he was at work. My husband recently took an overnight job to help us out during COVID. He's only been there about 2 weeks and works evenings/overnights, 9 p.m. through 6 a.m. Last night was so different. He left around 8:15 p.m. Our daughter, age 11, and I decided to make it a movie night. Around 11 p.m., I heard keys at my back door and the usual sounds my husband makes when he comes home. I creep out the kitchen to make sure it was him, and it was. He told me he needed to grab his knee compression sleeve, walks down the hall, says hi to our daughter as he passes the living room, and goes upstairs. He came back down, gave me a kiss, and left again. We finished our movie and went to bed. In the morning, when he got home, I made a joke commenting about him forgetting his knee sleeve. He was genuinely confused, as I recalled the previous night. Our daughter confirmed everything I said, and he still was acting confused. I pulled up our security motion camera on my phone to show him when he popped in real quick, but there was no footage from the night before, or any other night, of him coming home after he's left for work. My daughter and I both heard him, saw him, and even touched him, but he was never home during that time. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened that night. We seriously have no idea what happened. Something similar to this happened to me years ago. The only other witness was my sister's cat. So here's what happened. It was a weekend afternoon and I was using the bathroom at my house. As I opened the door to leave the bathroom, I saw my sister run by. She ran right in front of me through the hallway, past her cat, and into her room. Her cat, aptly named Salem, who was sitting by the bathroom door, does a double take in her direction and then leaps straight up in the air about 4 feet. As large chunks of her hair pop out, he quickly runs downstairs. Naturally, I'm a bit shocked and I call for my sister. I get no response, so I walk through the hallway and enter her room to find it empty. Then I go downstairs to check on the cat and find my sister, brother, and father watching television. I tell everyone what just happened. I'm not sure anyone believed me, but I bagged the cat hair and saved it. As I reflected on the memory, I realized that I never really saw her face as it ran by. It was just that my sister was the only person in the house that was that size, so I guess I assumed it was her. But whatever it was not my sister. I was still talking to my friend on the phone when she texted me, the line dropped, call me back ASAP. So this evening happened on October 7th, 2019 at 5:46 p.m. and I'll briefly try to describe it. I was on my way to running some errands, riding in my car while on the phone with this friend. I remember the weather being super weird, cloudy but hot. I don't really know how to describe it, but it felt like the air had some kind of heaviness to it. While I was on the phone to her, she said a few sentences, to which I replied in agreement. Suddenly, she starts saying the same exact sentences she said about 30 seconds earlier, only in a different tone and pace. It really sounded like she was repeating herself, and not like the actual voice glitched and repeated, which is what made it even creepier. So at this point, everything becomes fuzzy and weird, almost as if I lost the sense of time. In the meantime, I heard my messages ringtone going off a few times through the earpiece, but I decided to check them out later on. So I go on and tell her I'm pretty sure that she already said to me all those things, and the most unsettling thing is that her voice would stop whenever I tried telling her, as if she was actually listening, but would continue on as soon as I'd go silent. Without saying anything regarding the fact that she was repeating herself over and over, it was like talking to someone who was purposely trying not to answer. It felt incredibly odd, especially considering each sentence was slightly different than the previous one, but the meaning kept on being the same. That's when I lost her completely. The line gets cut off, and I go check the messages I received earlier. Turns out they were actually from her. 2 of them were missed calls, and the last one said I should call her back as soon as I could. I was still actively talking to her while at the same time she was asking me to call her back. Definitely one of the most bizarre things that has ever happened to me. I've had this exact thing happen to me several years ago while on the phone with my girlfriend during a babysitting job. Weird things had happened already in the house earlier on, so I was sitting downstairs and talking to her on the phone while the kids slept. All of a sudden, the voice started to distort and get really scary, so I freaked out and hung up and called back. I apologized and explained what had happened, but she had told me that the call dropped like over 10 minutes before that. I put it out totally out of mind until now, and it's weird to hear it happen to someone else. I get the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. I lost my daughter glitch. Hey, so this just happened and I have an eerie and weird feeling that something is not right. So let me explain the placement of my house. When you come in, there's a little hall, and in front of you, the bathroom. Then you go to the left, and you have a small kitchen, then a door. Then it's my bedroom, but it's so big I turned it into a living room. And right next to my bedroom is my daughter's bedroom. Everything is an L shape. I, 24 years, live alone with my daughter, 2 years old, and our 2 pit bunnies. So I had lunch with my daughter and it started getting cold and dark, so we went into my bedroom and closed the door to the kitchen. She always plays in my bedroom and her bedroom that are directly connected. I was reading some Reddit stories while listening to her, making her casual noises, talking to herself, singing, asking me something, moving toys around, and the basic children noise. Suddenly, the house goes completely silent, and after a few seconds I think that maybe she's being mischievous and doing something that she isn't supposed to, like all kids do. So I go check on her since I didn't see her from where I was laying. Let me make it clear that there is no way for her to go outside without opening the creaky door to the kitchen that is right in front of me, and she never tried to do it since the lights in the kitchen are off and she's scared of the dark. So I look everywhere in her bedroom and start calling her name. Nothing. Check in her closet. Nothing. Under her bed, in her little play tent, in her toy chest under my bed, the sofa, my desk, everywhere. Nothing. She is nowhere to be seen. Let's mention she has never tried to hide and stuff like that. She comes when she is called, so I started to freak out. I knew I didn't hear her leave my bedroom to the kitchen, but I checked anyways. Nothing. The bathroom empty. Now I'm starting to panic. I go inside again and check everything over, and while I'm in her bedroom, I hear crying from outside and look through my daughter's window to see her outside laying on the ground, only wearing a t-shirt. Not the t-shirt she was previously wearing, but the one of the t-shirts that she has. I ran outside almost falling over, but when I opened the door, silence. She wasn't there. There was no crying. It was silence again. I go outside and check everything and can't find her or any trace of her being there. Defeated, I go back upstairs, ready to call 911, when I go to my bedroom and see her calmly playing with the same blocks in her bedroom she was playing with before. She was wearing her clothes as if it never disappeared. The t-shirt I saw her wearing outside was in her wardrobe and neatly folded. I'm still in shock and sitting, staring at my daughter, feeling that if I blink, she might disappear again. Something told me to slam on the brakes at an unactivated railway crossing. Likely saved my life. Have been reading through this sub for a bit and figured I'd share this little odd occurrence that happened a while ago that probably saved my life. I'll include as much detail as possible. It's a vivid memory we both recall very well. Happened several years ago. I was driving down a rural back road with my brother, driving 90 miles per hour. It's a road I've traveled millions of times. At this one section, there's a railway crossing with lights, bells, and gates. It's a crossing with very poor visibility, hence the lights and gates at a rural crossing. On this particular day, I'm driving my old diesel pickup, a loud old shitbox, music playing, and having a convo with my brother. Coming up to the crossing out of nowhere, mid-conversation, I just interrupt and blurt out, "Hey, I wonder if we'd be able to stop before the crossing if I just hammer the brakes right now." And without a second thought, I just do it. The truck screeches to a stop, several meters from the tracks, right as the train screams by. The crossing never activated, no lights, no bells, no gate. I've stopped at this particular crossing in the past. Crossing is supposed to activate well in advance, and trains do freeway speeds through the area. We looked at each other, wide-eyed, and both of our jaws basically sitting on the floor. My brother goes, "Holy shit, dude. What the hell made you stop?" Neither of us heard or saw anything. To this day, we still don't know what prompted me to spontaneously spit out those words and jam the brakes. But I'm certain we'd either both be dead or severely screwed up if I had kept going. Me and my daughter witnessed something surreal and unexplainable today. For a few weeks before this, while out driving, I observed pedestrians standing at the traffic lights who will reach into their pocket and look at their phone as they're walking across the road when the light goes green. Nothing significant or strange about this, just one of those mundane things you notice while going about your day. Today I was driving with my daughter and we stopped at a red light. At a crossing there was a man standing there, nothing out of the ordinary. Denim jacket, black cap, glasses, around 6'2". I thought I'd try to weird out my young daughter. She's 5 years old, so I knew I was going to blow her mind. So I said, "See that man?" When the walking man goes green and he starts to walk across, he'll reach into his pocket and pull out his phone and start looking at it. Watch and see. As he walks across, he reaches into his pocket, but then immediately takes his hand out and looks and points right at me with his mouth open, smiling, like a gotcha stance. Of course, my daughter found this absolutely hilarious, and I sat there completely mind blown. I must have sat there in silence looking at him walk across for the next 10 seconds. I drove on and had a look at him as I drove past, and he was smirking/laughing. I've been playing it through my head all day. The windows were up, the radio was on, I wasn't shouting, my voice was not even remotely raised. He must have been about 15 to 20 feet away from me. I can't figure out at all how he could have heard me. It's literally impossible. How did he know I was trying to predict? He'd reach into his pocket for his phone. The only even remote possibility I can think of is that he just had the same observation as me and thought I might be thinking the same thing, so he just went for it. But realistically, what are even the chances of this? My ex's mom passed away and sent us a message on my phone. This is my first post, so bear with me, but after reading many other glitch stories, I wanted to share mine here. In early December 2015, my now ex-boyfriend's mother passed away in the home following surgery and other health problems related to her heart. She was born with a rare condition. Unfortunately, she went into cardiac arrest and we were unable to save her, so the event in and of itself was extremely traumatic and unexpected. A couple of nights later, we decided to go see some friends who wanted to offer their condolences to my ex. Everyone loved his mom. We were all sitting in our friend's living room watching TV, and to be honest, they were really trying to distract us from everything. One friend was just being her goofy self, and I was taking Snapchat videos, and I distinctly remembered taking a video of, let's call her Amy. I saved the video, but when I looked at my screen to watch it, it was not Amy. It was a grainy video with a background that appeared to be outside, and 1,000,000% not in a living room. But on the screen was my ex's mom. She said the words, "I'm okay, baby, I'm okay," and multiple other friends saw it on my phone before it disappeared. She looked young and vibrant and has a huge smile on her face. Someone had tossed my phone to another friend across the couch to see, and the video then disappeared. When we watched the original video back immediately after, my ex's mom was gone. It was Amy in the video again, just like I saw it while recording it in the first place. My ex and his mom had a very close relationship, best friends really. So when we saw her on my screen, letting him know she was okay, it was astounding. I saw it first, and everyone noticed I was visibly upset. I could not imagine what went through my ex's mind and heart when he saw it. But to this day, it's something we talk about and something he shares with new friends. Something we simply cannot explain other than her coming through in a glitch to let us know that she was okay. This is something they call instrumental transcommunication, a fancy term for receiving messages from the dead on an electronic device. The most famous ones are EVP recordings, but it's been known to happen through phone calls, emails, texts, TV images, etc. Pretty much any electronic device that can be used to communicate. Is there an explanation for what my child said? It is creeping me out. Last spring, when my son was 3 years old, we drove by a big white church. This church is one that we passed often driving around town. It is also the place of his current preschool, but at that time, he attended a different preschool and had never stepped foot in or talked about the big white church. So we drove by one day and he said, "Oh, there's the church that I eat cereal in." My husband and I looked at each other and said, "What do you mean? We've never been there before." We asked some additional questions, but he didn't really answer. However, he was very adamant about being there and eating cereal. This happened during a very difficult time in our lives. My father-in-law was on hospice and dying of cancer. For weeks, we were up and back to my in-laws' house, this church being along the route. He said it a few more times and then never mentioned it again. Fast forward to today, he currently attends preschool at said church. He has been going since September and we love it. It is Christian though, we aren't very religious. Anyway, I got the monthly newsletter and it mentioned that next month is pajama day, where the kids wear pajamas and eat cereal. I told my son and asked him if he remembered eating cereal there before. He said no, and had no recollection of saying that he did. Is there an explanation for this? It gives me the chills when I think about it. The girl who wasn't. When I was 16, I took an SAT prep class to improve my score and get into a good college. The class was pretty boring, but I met the most interesting girl in the class. She was thin, fairly short, with light brown hair and green eyes. She always wore a green headband, which I thought was cute. Her name was Connie. We hit it off immediately and spent most of the class whispering to each other by side at her desk. I spent about 3 weeks sitting next to her, talking during the class. When the class was over, we exchanged IM handles so we could keep in touch. This was in the early 2000s. About a year passed, and we continued talking online. We got to know each other pretty well, but we lived on completely different sides of the city, and it was quite a drive to visit each other, so being the young teens we were, we never actually got together. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask her out for dinner. I set our date at a restaurant located between the both of us, so we wouldn't have to drive far. The time for our dates rolled around, and I headed to the restaurant to meet her. I walked in and saw her sitting in the booth with 2 older individuals at the side of the establishment. She looked exactly like she did in the class. Thin, light brown hair, green eyes, and she was wearing the signature green headband. I approached her and said hello. I gave her a hug and sat down next to her in the booth. I assumed these 2 older individuals across from her were her parents. Odd, I thought, but maybe they were there to chaperone. I could immediately tell something was wrong. The 2 older individuals looked very confused, surprised, almost bewildered. The look on Connie's face was also one of perplexity. Eventually, she said, "Who are you?" I was shocked. I said, I'm Jason. Remember we set up a date for tonight? I assume these are your parents. It's very nice to meet you." And I reached out my hand to shake her parents' hands. They didn't return my handshake. Instead, they simply looked at their daughter and said, "Oh, did you forget to tell us this, Sarah?" "Sarah?" I said. "You told me your name was Connie." She looked absolutely puzzled and said, "Sorry, you must have me confused with someone else." "Oh, my mistake," I replied, then scratched my head and headed out of the restaurant to my car. I was embarrassed. Maybe she just didn't want to go out with me, I thought. She could have at least just said no instead of leading me to this charade. Defeated and humiliated, I decided to just head home. When I opened the door to my car, I heard a voice behind me say, "Hey, Jason." I turned around, and it was a tall, light blonde-haired woman with a large round face and blue eyes. Do I know you?" I said, "It's me, Connie. We had a date planned, remember?" "Where are you going?" she said. We went inside and had dinner. She was definitely Connie. She remembered all our previous conversations over the past year, but she looked nothing like the girl I met in class. When I asked her why she stopped wearing her green headband, she said she had no recollection of ever wearing or even owning that type of headband. I can't explain it. And those were a few stories I had for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and checking out my other content. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.